way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
We take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'm John Dickerson. Join me for the Daily Report, weekdays on CBS.
My state, and I see it as a fight for women's independence and their autonomy.
You have to give us something to vote for.
Do you think that sitting this election out sends a message?
Absolutely, because we're weaponizing our vote.
I feel like this year's election is going to be a nail biter because there's so many different issues and views going on today.
Hello, I'm Robert Costa in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. Today we're tracking how abortion rights and young voters are shaping the 2024 race, because today does mark 2 years since Roe v. Wade was overturned, and Vice President Kamala Harris campaigning on the issue today. Later this hour, we'll check in on her event. According to a new CBS News poll, a majority of Americans think abortion should be legal. Our polling also shows 61% of voters under the age of 30 support President Biden. But will this key voting bloc turn out? That's why we're turning to Caitlin Huey-Burns and Anthony Salvanto, our friend who joins us now. Caitlin is CBS News political correspondent. Anthony is CBS News' executive director of elections and surveys. Anthony, let's begin with you. You're at the board. What are young voters saying?
Hey, Bob. Look, we want to look at everybody, but we want to start with young voters as a key group, because take a look at this. In addition to those issues you raised, they think it's harder for them now than it was for previous generations to do things like buy a home, raise a family, get a good job. That sets the context not only for how they look at this election, but also how they look at the economy. And then there's this. They also think that they're going to inherit a world where the environment is worse and where there's fewer opportunities and a lot more danger. So all of that sets the context. But then the question is, and this will lead into what we're talking about today, what do they do about it? Well, they think there's a lot of things they can do. They can be active in a lot of areas, but voting is not necessarily always one of them. Look at that. 2/3 say they'll definitely vote. And you compare that to those over age 65, where almost all of them say they're going to vote. And that puts a cap, frankly, on some of those numbers you showed for the Biden vote earlier, where if people don't turn out, then their impact there becomes limited by definition, Bob.
Stick with us, Anthony. So those are the numbers, at least some of them. What about the voices, Caitlin? You've heard from many young voters over the course of recent weeks.
Yeah, we spent some time in Arizona, a key battleground state, talking to voters under 30 about this election. As Anthony notes in his polling, we found that on the ground in Arizona as well. This kind of, feeling of the difficulty of getting ahead, especially in this economy. And that's what's notable, is that we saw in our polling, and also translated into our reporting on the ground, was that the economy was top of mind for voters, whether they were supporting Trump, whether they were supporting Biden, or wanting to sit it out altogether. Listen to a little bit of what we heard from voters.
Are you going to vote?
I'm on the fence about that right now, just because I'm not happy about my options. But I do understand that if I don't vote, then it's probably a vote for Trump.
Well, you have to give us something to vote for. I think that's why a lot of people are choosing to, sit this one out, is because at the end of the day, we are the future.
So we heard from young voters what we're hearing from a lot of voters across the country, which is that they are disappointed in their choices and not really feeling, at least at this point in their lives, like voting in a national election can really change things. A few voters that we talked to, young voters, were actually saying that they felt like local politics affected their lives more intimately than national politics.
Anthony, what does our polling show about who these people are going to support if they do show up at the polls?
Well, let me pick up on that, because one of the reasons that people connect or don't connect with a campaign is the candidates, right? Well, take a look at this. Is candidate age a factor in your vote? And for a majority of them, both Biden's age and Trump's age is. Why does that matter? Because they don't necessarily think that that will allow the candidates to understand the needs and concerns of young people. And I'll add this. even if people aren't satisfied with their choices. When they're older, they vote anyway. But for young people, we can empirically see that when they're dissatisfied, they're less likely to turn out. And that's one of the reasons why, Bob.
What about the issue of Gaza, Anthony?
Yeah, that's been a key thing. We've talked about that a lot during the run-up. You saw the college protests, et cetera. There's two things here. One is that younger people are the most likely to say that Joe Biden should call on Israel to stop its military actions in Gaza. So there's a definite difference there between them and older folks. But having said that, these other issues like abortion that you mentioned, like the economy, like climate change, all of those matter a lot, too. And right now, those are driving that vote toward Joe Biden, Bob.
And building off of that, Caitlin, what did you hear from young people about Gaza and how that's affecting their vote? The young man you spoke with, was it a factor in his vote or not?
It was interesting. I mean, one person that we spoke to who was actually going to or wanting to support RFK Jr. said that that was a factor in his vote. He said that he told us Biden was doing a good job, but that his handling of the Israel-Hamas war was a non-starter for him. So that led him away from Biden and towards someone like RFK Jr. We'll see if he's on the ballot in where he lives. But Anthony picks up on a really interesting point, too, which is this question of this voter engagement on these issues, economy, but also abortion rights, climate change, race and diversity. And what was interesting about Anthony's polling is that these campaigns have a lot of work to do in terms of convincing voters to turn out for them on those issues. Even if they were supportive of those issues, there were questions about whether, Biden had done enough on abortion and other kinds of issues. And it's also interesting that Anthony's polling found among those who voted in 2020, because young voters were such a key part of Biden's coalition, only a third of them say that they are planning to vote this time around. So a lot of work to do for these candidates.
And Anthony, what about the Trump campaign? The Biden side, every time I'm talking to my sources there, they say they want to frame Trump as a threat to democracy, a threat to abortion rights, a threat to the future for young people. They say the Biden administration has done so much on student loans, the economy, other issues. So how do young people, based on our polling, actually see Trump?
Well, you start with this. I'll pick up on the abortion point where, yeah, if abortion's a major factor, they're voting for Joe Biden. Having said that, there's a substantial portion of them that aren't sure they know what either candidate would do, what Joe Biden would do, what Donald Trump would do on abortion, to Caitlin's point about messaging. But the point with Trump is the same, frankly, among all age groups, which is the economy. Donald Trump does better among people, including young people, who prioritize the economy than over other issues like this. So that speaks across generations, right? What is this campaign about? What issues is it about? And that is one way that Donald Trump could, I think, if you're looking at the campaign, does he make inroads? That seems like one potential place.
And quickly, Anthony, if this debate is really influential for some young voters, if they tune in, what do you think will matter to them? Which issue will really matter if it comes up at the debate for young voters?
They tell us climate change because they think the environment has gotten worse. Race and diversity issues, because it is the most diverse generation that America has yet seen. And those issues are really important to them beyond the others that we mentioned, Bob.
It's always great to blend reporting with analysis and data. Caitlin Huey-Burns, Anthony Salvanto, always excellent. Thank you so much. Now, marking 2 years since the end of an American constitutional right to an abortion, the Supreme Court back over 50 years ago has made that an issue and made it an issue once again 2 years ago. So the chair of the DCCC will join us to discuss how Democrats are using that Dobbs decision to try and win over voters in districts controlled by Republicans. You're streaming America Decides.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That Desired Farm is a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, well, it's marking 2 years since Roe v. Wade was overturned by launching a new campaign this week targeting GOP lawmakers and their record on abortion. This week, the DCCC is placing mobile billboards in 5 competitive House districts represented by Republicans, who the committee believes celebrated the Dobbs decision. And these 5 districts are in California, New York, Oregon, and Pennsylvania. Democratic Congresswoman Susan DelBene is here to dig into this issue and effort more with us. She is the chair of the DCCC. Representative, we always appreciate you swinging by. America Decides. Thank you for your time. So, do you believe that putting this pressure on these members in these respective districts is really going to pay off in November, and why?
Well, today, women across the country are continuing to feel the devastating impact of the Supreme Court decision, and it has definitely been something that has endangered lives, well-being, and health of women across the country. And we want to remind voters where their member of Congress stands. We have Republicans across the country who praised the Supreme Court decision and then have kind of tried to wiggle out of that, tried to make it an issue. We want to make sure people know that Republicans across the country are trying to put in place a nationwide abortion ban. There's nothing moderate about their position, and we want to hold them accountable.
Is it harder in blue states to generate interest on this issue if people feel, especially Democrats or independent-leaning who support abortion rights, if they don't feel like this is front and center in their lives? Is it a little bit easier in red states? How do you see that dynamic?
Actually, folks all across the country understand that Republicans want to put in place a nationwide abortion ban, and blue states are feeling the impact too. So this is definitely something that is not an issue in just a few states. It's an issue everywhere, and folks are turning out to vote. They know that this is an issue that impacts them. When people come out to stand up for reproductive rights, women win, and reproductive rights are going to be in the battle for be on the ballot for millions of voters across the country in November. And so this will continue to be an important issue, like it has been in special election after special election after special election since November of 2022. Even in places like Kansas and Ohio and Virginia, even Alabama, we saw a Democrat win in a state legislative race, a 30-point swing since November of 2022. After the Alabama Supreme Court passed their decision to make in vitro fertilization illegal, people stood up and they spoke out.
When you're framing this issue on a political level, are you bringing in images and sound and video of former President Trump and tying the issue of abortion rights and Democrat support for that issue with Trump? Or is it more about railing against the Supreme Court and conservative justices? Is it more about doing a big picture push for abortion rights? You're the head of the DCCC. You study how to communicate with voters. What's effective, you believe, in really making the case and how you frame it?
Well, I think absolutely it's important for folks to remember how this happened. This absolutely was Donald Trump, congressional Republicans who were part of putting in place a Supreme Court that was going to overturn Roe versus Wade, and also have continued to put legislation out there to ban abortion. We see that even in bills that have nothing to do with reproductive rights, where they keep adding poison pills or riders. They've done that over and over again. In fact, this week we're going to have a defense appropriations bill funding for the Department of Defense, and Republicans are putting in riders to take away abortion rights for service members there. So they continue to do this over and over. So we just want people to see what they're doing and hear what they say, because they'll make that case.
Final thing, Representative, there is this upcoming primary in New York. Congressman Jamal Bowman facing a primary challenge. What is the DCCC's position on this race, and what is your personal position on this race?
Well, you know, the DCCC, we're focused on the purple districts that are going to help us take back the majority. And we know that we can take back the majority in New York. We have many races there. So we're going to continue to play in races across the country, make sure that we only need 4 more seats to take back the majority. So we're going to make sure that we do everything we can to turn out Democrats, take back the majority, take back the gavels, and make sure that we have a government that's working for the people.
Does Bowman have your support?
You know, again, we're focused on those purple races across the country, and we're going to make sure that we take back the majority in November.
Well, I didn't hear a yes there, but I didn't hear a no either. Congresswoman Susan DelBene, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Millions across the United States will watch President Biden and former President Trump go head-to-head this week. It'll be on Thursday night under the Thursday Night Lights. Up next, how they're preparing for that big showdown. You're streaming America Decides.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate. acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing or bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are just 3 days away from the first presidential debate of this 2024 election season, and President Biden, he's been at Camp David since last Thursday preparing for this highly anticipated face-off against former President Trump. And Trump spent his weekend on the campaign trail discussing this upcoming showdown.
How should I handle him? Should I be tough and nasty? Or should I be, she'd say, no, should I be tough and nasty and just say you're the worst president in history? Or should I be nice and calm and let him speak?
CBS News political director Finn Gomez joins us. Finn, great to have you here. So the former president down in New Orleans having a fundraiser, but the real talk's about who is he going to pick for a running mate? What's the latest you're hearing from your sources?
What I'm hearing from my sources, Bob, is similar to what you and I have been discussing. And it's really, they're zeroing in on the 3 names that we keep hearing about, and that's Marco Rubio, that's Doug Burgum, and that's J.D. Vance. Both are can offer different strengths, different weaknesses, of course. And I've been also cautioned that that is not the entire list. What
gives you confidence, based on your conversations with sources, that Rubio's in play? Because I'm hearing mixed things from people about Rubio.
I know that Marco Rubio has been speaking with the former president. He speaks to him, I'm told, regularly.
So he helped him with those policy briefings when he was in Washington?
In preparation for these debates and the policy briefings that he's been having with some senators, yes. And also the fact that what I keep hearing is that the impact they believe that he can have as an Hispanic, as a Latino on the ticket, because he could pull off some support in the margins of those states that we've discussed, those battleground states.
What's intriguing, though, is Jen O'Malley Dillon told Puck News that she doesn't believe Florida is a battleground state. Interesting.
No, what we're hearing is that they believe that it's something that's more competitive than it has been in previous cycles and previous iterations, and they're looking to expand on that map as well. I mean, obviously, the president is going to North Carolina, and the former president's going to Virginia, 2 states that they think that they can expand. I do think, and I've been hearing about Rubio also, is that he can speak to that sort of that establishment wing of the Republican Party, and also kind of be a bridge to the MAGA base, if you will. He does have that ability. I did speak to a top Democrat over the weekend who, when I discussed Rubio, said, I hope it's not Rubio, because Rubio can appeal to that Latino electorate that in some areas are seemingly more up for grabs.
What about J.D. Vance? Just 39 years old. That's a big generational gap between Trump and Vance.
Right.
I know Donald Trump Jr. likes Senator Vance. A lot of people in that MAGA world like Vance. He's built relationships that are real on the donor front in California and Silicon Valley. Is he, obviously people keep saying he's in play, but do you really believe, based on your conversations with Trump sources, that Trump's going to maybe pick someone who's under 40?
100%. Even though, and you recall well, Bob, that he was a never Trumper. He said things like Trump is political heroin before, but he is someone who is very popular now with that MAGA base, as you described. He's very popular with, like, if you will, the younger MAGA base as well. And he won a straw poll with TPUSA about a week ago and has that strength. He also has money. He can raise money. He's been a conduit, if you will, to that tech crowd. Peter Thiel's in his corner, as you know, that high-profile, big Republican donor. So if there's money that they're looking for, he can do that. So can Doug Burgum. But
Burgum's the name I keep hearing.
Same.
Now, look, in VP searches, sometimes you hear a name the whole time, and it's not that person.
Yeah.
That there's a surprise. And with Trump, there's always a surprise. I remember back in 2016, Chris Christie thought he was going to be the pick. Newt Gingrich thought he was going to be the pick. And then Mike Pence emerges at the 11th hour as the pick. And we're still, I think, miles away from that 11th hour to start mixing some of these phrases. Burgum, for now, though, seems to be in quite a position, based on my conversations with donors who have seen him up close with Trump. Trump likes him, not just as a political asset, but on a personal level. And that matters. He didn't know Pence, but he likes Burgum.
Yeah, one word is chemistry. They have a good chemistry together. That's important to Trump. He likes them. He likes the cut of his jib, if you will. He comes from central casting for Trump. And like him, he's an outsider who made it big, not only in politics, obviously, but previously in the private sector as a tech entrepreneur.
Vin Gomez, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. And join us at 9 p.m. Eastern on Thursday night for the presidential debate. Our special coverage begins an hour earlier at 8 p.m. Eastern right here on CBS News 24/7.
Women trust all of us to fight for their most fundamental freedoms. And fight we will.
That, of course, was Vice President Kamala Harris at a campaign event for abortion rights in College Park, Maryland today. We head there next. You're streaming America Decides.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Okay, let's go. You guys good?
Hey.
All right, we good?
Keep going.
It's the clock. It's ticking. Off we go.
60 minutes.
60 minutes.
60 minutes.
It's time for 60 Minutes. Sundays on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We
are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education. Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News Streaming.
Welcome to America Decides, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back to America Decides. On the campaign trail today, Vice President Kamala Harris took on former President Donald Trump.
So it comes down to this. Donald Trump thinks the government is in a better position to tell women what's in their best interest than women are to know for themselves. But Joe Biden and I trust women.
2 years out from the Dobbs decision, a new CBS News poll finds President Biden leads Trump among voters who say the issue of abortion will be a major factor in their vote. CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian joins us now. Nicole, tell us about Vice President Harris and her emphasis on this issue today.
Well, I think what was interesting about the vice president is she tried to draw the contrast, which is what we have seen the Biden campaign do, both the president and the vice president, draw that contrast between how they are going to handle this issue of abortion rights versus the former president, really pinning the blame squarely on him in terms of the nomination of these 3 conservative justices, which kind of changed the trajectory of the court, ultimately resulting in that Dobbs decision, to continuing to argue that the former president and Republicans writ large, in their view, will pursue some type of national abortion ban. So that is the argument that they both have been making to voters. But what was interesting about her speech today is that she took things a step further. And in light of the former president's recent conviction in New York, she used the terminology saying that the former president is guilty of stealing reproductive rights and freedoms from the women of America. So I just thought that was an interesting choice of words on her part. Of course, she is a former prosecutor, so she kind of used that as part of her argument, but certainly I think an argument we may see her make going forward.
Nicole, tell me about your conversation with abortion rights advocate Kate Cox.
Well, the vice president was joined on stage today by Kate Cox, a woman and mother from Texas who unsuccessfully sued the state when its abortion ban went into effect. Ultimately, she had to seek an abortion outside of the state, and that was primarily because the child she was carrying at the time was in danger of potentially being stillborn. And so to try to get ahead of that, that's why she was seeking that abortion. But I talked to her about the difficult decision that she had to make at that time, and now fast forwarding to today, where she says that she is now 3 months pregnant and very hopeful about that pregnancy, but still concerned about the path ahead. Take a listen.
I feel so happy with where we are. It's also very scary because emergencies and pregnancies happen in a moment. Your water can break too soon, miscarriage, and if those emergencies happen, my first call would be my lawyer, my second call would be my doctor. And so that's really scary to live in a place where that's my reality. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, given what happened with the last pregnancy, I imagine to a certain extent it may be a bit bittersweet.
Yeah. So it's hard to have those two feelings, to be so incredibly happy and also very scared, at the same time.
And she talked more to me about that conflicting emotion that she feels, of course, being happy that so far her pregnancy and her baby appears to be healthy, but also knowing that at any given time, if there is some type of complication, she could find herself right back in that position that she found herself, a year plus ago, when she had to make that difficult decision to terminate her pregnancy and not being able to in the state that she was living in. She said it's those kinds of difficult decisions that many women are confronted with, and that she doesn't want them to have to make just as she did. So that is why, of course, she was campaigning with the vice president, hoping that if they win a second term, that eventually some form of abortion access could be federally codified.
Nicole Killian on the front lines of one of the biggest issues of this campaign. We really appreciate your reporting and perspective. Thank you. And tomorrow, Democratic voters in New York's 16th congressional district will settle what has become a contentious primary fight. Incumbent Congressman Jamal Bowman has become a vocal critic of the Israeli government and military action in Gaza. He faces Westchester County Executive George Latimer. Let's bring in our political panel, Dave Weigel and Deepa Shivram. Dave is a politics reporter for Semaphore. Deepa is a White House correspondent for NPR. Great to have both of you here. Deepa, let's begin with you. New York.
Yeah.
We're paying attention to Washington. What's the big picture here on this race?
This is, I think, an interesting race because it brings in so many elements that we honestly don't even have the space for sometimes in our political conversation to get into, right? We're talking about massive amounts of money in politics, advertising. We're talking about issues in the Middle East. We're talking about issues of race. These are all things that normally in a primary race, we're not having to get into everything all at once. And then when you scale it back even further, you look at who's endorsed these candidates, right? Jamal Bowman being endorsed by Bernie Sanders, members of the squad, obviously, Hillary Clinton on the other side endorsing George Latimer. So we're seeing a lot of the Democratic divides that we've been talking about since 2015, 2016 playing out in this race in this one congressional primary in New York. So it's a small, like it's a district that we would normally be paying a ton of attention to, but really being outsized because of all of these issues.
Build on that point. Some Democrats nationally looking at this as a proxy battle between, let's just call it the Bernie Sanders wing or the AOC wing versus the more Clintonian establishment Democratic wing, especially when it comes to foreign policy. You were in the district. You've reported over the weekend on this race. Is it on the ground as much a proxy battle, or is it much more about the district and different personal issues with the candidates?
I think that's a fair assessment of it. It's also a heat check on how the left has lost some ground inside the party since 2020. The Justice Democrats who were on the ground organizing for Bowman, who helped him win in 2020, they've shrunk down most of their staff. Working Families Party is in New York, but it's been limited to by actions Governor Kathy Hochul's taken about ballot access. The left is just in a weaker position. The left, as defined by these pro-Bernie organizations that were built after 2016.
Just real quick follow-up on that. Yeah. Why do you have that assessment as a reporter? The left's a little bit weaker. Bernie Sanders runs, the Vermont senator, in 2016, 2020, builds a movement around his campaigns. Is it because Sanders is not running again for president that has somehow fallen away? What's the reason for this progressive movement to have a bit of a stumble in your view?
Yeah, well, Latimer's run a smart campaign where he's running as a progressive. His ads all talk about how progressive he is, how he's taken on the NRA, et cetera. His argument being, I am a pragmatic progressive. I can get things done that Jamal Bowman can't because he fights with Democrats all the time. That's an argument that really every AIPAC, UDP, Democratic Majority for Israel, all their candidates, all their ads make that argument. I'm not running as a conservative. I'm running as a fellow progressive without that baggage. So they're losing some ground as an electoral force because they've succeeded inside the party. We've covered the Tea Party. We've covered this happens when organizations are successful. Inside the district, Latimer is also very popular. And talking to AIPAC folks and DMFI folks today, they wish they had a Latimer in every one of these squad districts. They don't. They actually only have two challengers who are seen as making a real run at incumbents in the squad. They have Cori Bush coming up in August, and they have this race. They wish they had more county executives who've been elected for 35 years. They don't. But the argument that's winning is be a progressive, support Joe Biden, vote for this guy, not the guy who's talking about AIPAC and Israel all the time.
Back in Washington, well, actually, it's a little bit in Maryland.
Yeah.
Camp David. President Biden's preparing for this debate. What are you hearing from your sources in the White House about how prep is going? What really matters when it comes to the issue focus on Thursday night?
I mean, you're going to hear about Trump a lot. I think not just from Trump himself, but you're going to hear, I think, from President Biden to bring up almost, issues that Trump has said himself, right? We see the DNC, the White House, sending out notes, emails all the time of, here are the 9 points that Donald Trump made today. And the fact of the matter is voters, a lot of voters in this country, are not clued into this election yet. So they're missing most of what Donald Trump is saying on a weekly basis. And so the role that Joe Biden has to play in this debate is not only defending his record of the last 4 years, but also looking at Donald Trump and saying, well, you've said this is what you're going to do. Project 2025, the things that Donald Trump is talking about, Joe Biden really needs to emphasize so that voters start paying attention.
Is there any debate, we'll start with Dave and then Deepa, is there any debate about that kind of focus on Trump? President Biden had the American Rescue Plan early on in 2021, over $1 trillion, and the infrastructure package. We saw some campaigns when they put the huge spotlight on Trump, like Terry McAuliffe's gubernatorial in 2021 in Virginia. It doesn't always work. Sometimes it works. Is there a debate in the party about this?
There is some debate about why Biden is not laying out more clearly what he would do in a second term. This is similar to what Trump didn't do in 2020. It was hard to get some hard details about what Trump would do, apart from some things he got interested in at the end of the campaign, like ending DEI across the federal government. The Democrats' message is basically he will finish the job, give us a majority, we'll pass popular progressive, I wouldn't say progressive, popular policies that'll uplift more people. They have that argument, but they're going into a debate where most of the country for 4 years, accelerating since the 2020 election, have said Donald Trump is not too old to be president and Joe Biden is. Donald Trump looks like he can't handle the job and Joe Biden couldn't. So obviously they need to just let Trump get over his skis, and any effort to make that happen, it's less about here's what I'm going to do in a second term. It's more, do you really want to hand the keys back to this guy?
It's interesting. I think, you look at someone like Kamala Harris, who was speaking in Maryland today. She's going to Arizona later. She is someone who, especially on this issue of abortion, really does well when she has someone to punch at.
Right.
She sounds stronger. She's more effective in her communication when she has someone like Donald Trump to be like, he's guilty, like what he said, what she was saying earlier today in Maryland. I will say, though, I think on Joe Biden's side, and sometimes when I hear from voters, I was just in Pennsylvania over the weekend at an event with the First Lady who was talking about abortion. And I heard from voters there who are big Joe Biden fans. They're already voting for the president. That's not in question. But even they were like, I kind of think we talk about Trump too much. Like, we said Trump's name too many times in this event, but we didn't talk about a second Joe Biden term.
What was your impression of the First Lady on the trail?
She's strong. And like Kamala Harris, she has a personal experience with talking about abortion. So that is something that, we know this president, not super comfortable talking about abortion, doesn't even often use the word abortion. And so when you have messengers like Kamala Harris and Jill Biden out on the trail talking about how they were personally affected by this, I think it comes on pretty strongly in the room. And people are excited to see someone like her, oftentimes a little bit better than being excited about seeing the president, who, as we know in polls, doesn't really have a lot of enthusiasm around his campaign.
So let's build off of my conversation with Finn Gomez on the VP search for Trump. Instead of talking about who Trump might pick, which is a fruitless endeavor, because none of us can read Donald Trump's mind. Let's say you and I have covered a lot of VP searches over the years together. I remember driving down to Norfolk, Virginia in 2012, the night Paul Ryan leaked out that he was going to be the pick, and racing to get there to see Mitt Romney announce it. Let's say Doug Burgum, the North Dakota governor's picked. What's the impact in the race, if any?
I think there's already some spin being built to make him look like a moderating force inside the party. This is what happened with Mike Pence. Democrats struggled. I think they got some traction because of Pence's social conservative record, but they struggled to say this guy who looks like a normal adult politician is a big danger to the country. But they're in the same position with the vice president. If you look at not just her approval ratings, but the messages that go out about her on social media or the videos that get shared on social media, she also has this reputation as somebody who can't put a sentence together, and she clearly can. If you see her on the trail, there'll be maybe a couple bad moments and good moments. So I think if it's a Burgum situation, the spin would be, here's an adult who can help Donald Trump govern. What's his actual record? And he'd be squared up against somebody who people think they don't like right now.
Any quick final thoughts?
I'm curious if he'll pick a woman. We don't know. As you said, we don't have a crystal ball. Yeah,
maybe Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the Arkansas governor.
There are
Kristi
options.
Noem, the South Dakota
options.
governor.
Yeah.
There are a lot of internal discussion, I'm told, about if he picks a woman for the ticket, does that actually bring some of his issues from the past about his interactions with women to the fore in a way that it might not with Doug Burgum or J.D. Vance? We'll see. Too much speculation with the VP search. We're doing our best here to focus on the reporting. Dave Weigel and Deepa Shivaram, thank you so much for stopping by. We really appreciate it. And former President Donald Trump's lawyers, they returned to a Florida courtroom today, attempting to persuade the judge there to dismiss the federal classified documents case. Coming up next, we'll take a look at today's arguments. You're streaming America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. and reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Now, for a second day, Judge Eileen Cannon heard arguments over whether Special Counsel Jack Smith was properly appointed in Trump's classified documents case, that federal case. Prosecutors are urging her to bar Trump from making public comments about the FBI agents working on the case. Let's bring in Katrina Kaufman, our colleague who was inside the courtroom today in Florida. Katrina, always good to see you. Just saw you in New York. Now you're in Florida. What's going on with this federal case? Is it going to go to trial? And where does this all stand with the judge?
Hi, Bob. That is a great question. So as you were mentioning, we just had 2 days of arguments about whether or not Jack Smith is lawfully appointed and whether he's lawfully funded. Trump claims that he is not, and that on that basis, this entire indictment should be dismissed. Judge Cannon seemed skeptical of the arguments, but she also did seem like she was taking them very seriously. She came prepared with many questions for both sides, and she really seemed to be weighing these issues. And then the other hearing that I was just in was one this afternoon that was about the modifications of Trump's bail condition. And that is that the prosecution wants to put limitations on Trump's speech specifically related to the FBI agents that were part of the search of Mar-a-Lago and who are potential witnesses in this case. He says that Trump has had inflammatory rhetoric about them that could lead to violence, and they're very worried about the safety of these agents. So they want Judge Cannon to impose this additional condition on Trump's bail.
So during Trump's presidency, there was a special counsel, Robert Mueller, investigated issues related to Russia, appointed by Trump's own attorney general at the time. What's the issue with the special counsel here in the view of Trump's attorneys?
Trump's attorneys are saying that Jack Smith was not lawfully appointed. They say that he should have been appointed by the president and approved by the Senate. The prosecution argues that Merrick Garland had the ability to appoint Jack Smith, and as you pointed out, that special prosecutors were appointed during Trump's own administration in this way, that there is a long-standing history and practice of special counsels being appointed like this, and of them being funded from this particular appropriation that Trump is also calling unlawful. He says that Smith should be paid out of the DOJ's normal budget, not out of this unlimited appropriation that was set up for independent counsels years ago, because technically the act that it was set up under no longer exists. But there is precedent. Special counsels have continued to be paid this way for years. And no matter what, Smith's team says that even if Trump is right about this funding issue, which they say he's not, and they of course say Smith is lawfully appointed, that it still wouldn't be enough of a basis to dismiss this indictment altogether. It doesn't actually create any prejudice against Trump as a defendant in this trial. It's more of a technical financial matter.
Help us understand. I know you're a lawyer, Katrina, so some of us who didn't take our, well, my parents didn't pressure me to go to law school, to be fair, but they're both lawyers, and we didn't follow in the path in the Costa household. That all being said, you are an attorney and a reporter. What are you watching with the Supreme Court this week on presidential immunity, and what would that potentially mean for the trial or the potential trial in Florida on the classified documents?
I mean, with this presidential immunity issue, we are, of course, waiting to see whether or not they'll say that Trump has presidential immunity. And then there's also what looks like a strong possibility that the court will send this issue back to Judge Chutkan to make determinations on the distinction between private and official acts that are involved in this indictment. So this could go a few different ways, and one of them could potentially involve sort of a mini trial where she makes that determination.
Katrina Kaufman, thank you. Stay cool down there in Florida. The Supreme Court says it will hear those arguments, and another one on a Tennessee law that prohibits gender-affirming health care for transgender minors. Supreme Court's busy these days, and opponents of that bill claim that those laws violate the constitutional rights of people in the state and deprive minors from the benefit of treatment. Lawyers for the state of Tennessee say minors should not be allowed to receive these medical procedures until they can, quote, fully understand lifelong consequences of such procedures, end quote, or until the science is further developed. In recent years, more than 20 states have enacted laws restricting gender-affirming treatments. Some voters are expressing concerns about the state of democracy, what Americans from battleground states are telling us, and CBS's Face the Nation about how candidates are handling those issues. You're streaming America Decides.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean? What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened? Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
On Face the Nation, the way to learn is to listen.
We may have a recession.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
In a original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
If we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education. Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News Streaming.
Welcome to America Decides.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
We take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
Welcome back to America Decides. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims he's committed to a ceasefire and hostage release proposal after casting doubt on it over the weekend. He also says intense fighting against Hamas in southern Gaza is winding down. CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tayeb has the latest from Israel.
Well, he was flanked by security as he entered the studio for his first interview with Israeli TV since before the October 7th attacks. And Prime Minister Netanyahu announced that the heaviest fighting against Hamas in Rafah was nearly over. But when asked about the Israeli proposal President Biden outlined weeks ago for a ceasefire in Gaza and hostage release deal with Hamas, Netanyahu said, and I'm quoting here, "Our terms are not to end the war." Now, this is a statement he very quickly walked back, saying that he was in fact committed to that proposal, a proposal the families of hostages are also desperate for. Tonight, 3 of them, including the parents of American Hirsch Goldberg Poland, allowed for the release of videos of the abductions that Hamas fighters filmed themselves. Goldberg Poland's bloodied hand, which was later amputated, was clear to see. But it was Netanyahu's comments that troops in Gaza would be redeployed to the north that has intensified fears Israel is readying for another major war. This time with the powerful Iranian-backed Hezbollah movement. We traveled to northern Israel, where many communities there are now ghost towns after the Israeli military and Hezbollah began trading cross-border fire back in October. With the threat of another front opening up, Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant was heckled by protesters as he arrived in Washington for a series of high-level meetings. Gallant's closed-door talks about a potential war in Lebanon comes as CBS News has learned the U.S. aircraft carrier Eisenhower will move from the Red Sea into the eastern Mediterranean as concerns about a full-scale conflict breaking out on Israel's northern front only mount. Robert.
Imtiaz Tayeb, thank you. And we're hearing from voters about the issues that matter to them ahead of November. Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan spoke with 6 voters from 4 battleground states.
Raise your hand if any of you think about, for example, the state of our democracy. Does that concern you? And is that a reason that you would, you are jumping right at it, Marlene. That I didn't even finish the sentence. What's going on?
Donald Trump does not want what's good for America. He does not want democracy. He wants to have everything his way. He wants to place people in power that will do whatever he says this time, because the last time he didn't do that. He had people that were pushing against him for the things he wanted to do. But this time he's going, and he said he's going to put people in there that are going to listen to him and do what he says. That means in the Justice Department, if he wants so-and-so to be in the Justice Department because they're going to do whatever he says, that he's going to go after all of his political opponents, even if they haven't done anything wrong. He's going to have complete control, and that's what he wants.
Well, I think he wants the Justice Department gone, too.
Lydia, you're raising your hand.
Yes. So the same can be said about President Biden. He has forced the EVs on us. Nobody wants to buy EVs. Our electrical grid is not built to support it. Yet he forced all the car manufacturers to convert to EVs, and now they did it because they had no choice. They were going to be penalized if they didn't, and now they're finally pushing back and saying no. There's no sales for these vehicles. Tesla somehow is making it. I don't know how, but they are. And then he's struck all the drilling that we could be doing to be an independent nation for fuel. So our gas prices would not have to be rising the way they are. And he struck all that down. So, tit for tat.
Lydia, do you think somebody's making you buy a car?
Yeah, I'm not buying an EV.
By 2030.
He made it. America has made it mandatory.
No, Americans won't be required to drive electric vehicles. The car manufacturers, there was a goal set for the transition to happen, but Americans won't be required, and car manufacturers will still make combustion engines too.
However, they might not be.
The problem is the infrastructure is not there.
Fascinating reporting from Face the Nation and Margaret Brennan. You can watch the entire hour-long interview at CBSNews.com. That does it for today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report with our friend John Dickerson starts right now.
Welcome to the Daily Report for June 24th, 2024. I'm Jeff Glor in for John Dickerson. A truce proposal on the ropes. Benjamin Netanyahu says he will not agree to a U.S.-backed plan that would end the war in Gaza. So what's next? Flooding in the Midwest collapses